So we'll see here now the syntax for creating the primary key at the column level and table level. So first we will discuss the column level syntax. Okay. So my syntax is create table name. Now my employee one table is already exists. So I will use here name employee 2. Create table name employee 2. Then employee ID, data type, number with size 5. Now I want to create here employee ID as the primary key. So my column level syntax is just give here space and write primary key. Primary key, then comma. The next field you can mention as it is that we have discussed in this previous syntax. So next field that I want to add here ename with the varchar. Then age with the number. Then department with the varchar 10. And salary with the number 10,2 and location with the varchar with the 10. If you execute this command, it is showing error, right parenthesis missing. So create table employee 2, employee ID with the number, data type, primary key, constraint, then ename, varchar, then age, number, department, varchar, salary, number, so where is the error? Here is the spelling mistake of varchar, and that's why it is showing the error, right parenthesis missing, right? Now again we can execute here this command. So my table is created here. So if you see structure of employee 2 table that we have recently created. So here, if you see the constraint here, we have created employee ID with the primary key constraint. So here in the editor, it shows the primary key type, right? But in the actual editor, actual Oracle, when you will run this command, only in the describe command, you will see the not null constraint. So not null constraint indicate that particular field cannot be null. So the null, if that null field is empty, it indicates that field can accept the null values also, right? So now we can see the another method for creating this primary key at the column level. Now I cannot use the same table name, otherwise it will give you the error. Table already exists, or that name is used by the existing object. So now I am giving here the employee 3 name for using the another syntax, that is constraint. After declaring field name, you can use this word constraint, then constraint name. So I want to give here constraint name EID underscore PK. Okay. So constraint name, and then you can mention here primary key. So this will create the employee 3 table with the employee ID as the primary key constraint. Okay. So my table is created here. Again, you can check in schema. Employee 3 is created with the primary key constraint, and my name of the constraint is now EID PK. But for employee 2, if you see the employee 2 here, the name of the constraint is given by the server. That is, this is the name given by the server to the primary key, right? Now in the employee 3, this name is given by the user. That is the only difference. Now we can see the syntax of the table level. Now I want to declare this primary key at the table level. So now I cannot use same table. I am giving table name employee 4. Now I will remove this column level syntax from here, right? So now I want to, after declaring all these columns, right? I want to declare this employee ID as a primary key at the table level. So my simple syntax is just say primary key, and in bracket you can mention which field of the table you want to make as a primary key. So in bracket I have mentioned here EID. So this statement will create the table with the EID as a primary key. So it is showing what? Parenthesis missing, comma is missing here. That's why that error is showing. Again, if you run this statement, It is showing table created. You can check here employee 4 table. With the primary key constraint associated with the column employee ID. So here employee ID with the column constraint. Here if you observe also, it shows nullable no. By default it is S, and this S indicate what? It can accept null value, but when you create this as a primary key, nullable field is no. So this is the not null constraint for every primary key. By default it is not null. Right? Then see the syntax of column label. Again, I'm creating employee 5 table here. My syntax is again same as the column label. Here you can mention constraint name. So again, my constraint name I am giving here employee ID underscore PK. Right? Now this name is given by the user, and my primary key in bracket you can mention here column name that you want to make as a primary key. You can run this command and you can see name already used by the existing. Okay, if you are giving this constraint name which is already exists by the any other field constraint, again it will give you the error. See, name already used by the existing constraint. So we can't use again this name, because in future if you want to perform some drop this constraint or modify this constraint, the name is useful, right? So again my constraint name cannot be same, right? So I have given alter this name to the employee ID underscore PK1, right? Now you run this statement and see the result. So now my table is created. You can see here my table is created, employee 5 with the employee ID as a constraint, but we use here table level syntax. Again, if you see nullable is no, and if you see constraint, now my constraint name is EID underscore PK1, right? So table level syntax help you to remember the name that you can modify or drop in the future if required. Then again, we can see the here syntax for composite key. If my ID is a composite key, assume my primary key is made up of employee ID and employee name, right? So that you can mention here employee ID comma employee name combination, right? Composite key for the primary key. Again, here we can't use the same constraint name. So I have given this constraint name EID underscore PK2, right? So this statement will create here again table with the composite primary key EID and ename. If you run this statement, the result is table created. You can see again here the structure of employee 6 table. So it is created with the primary key constraint PK2, right? And columns are same. Again here nullable is no. If you observe for ename and EID both are no, right? So it is creating here the composite primary key. So I hope you all are clear. So this is for syntax of primary key for column label and table label. Right? Thank you.